as new details continue to emerge about the suspect in last week's murder of the UnitedHealthcare CEO in Midtown Manhattan. Investigators have made a fingerprint match, they say, between the suspected killer, Luigi Mangione, and evidence near the crime scene in New York City. That new information released not too long ago by New York City's police commissioner, Commissioner Jessica Tisch, saying the fingerprints were found on a snack bar wrapper and a water bottle purchased at a nearby coffee shop while the gunman awaited his target. Tisch also added that the gun found on Mangione matched the shell casings found at the site of the shooting. Mangione is being held under maximum security at the State Correctional Institute in Huntington, Pennsylvania. We're told placed in a cell by himself. A lot to discuss here, so I do want to bring in Toby Braun, founder of American Special Investigative Group and an expert in threat intelligence and executive protection. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Well, first off, I do want to talk about the case overall, as we've seen a lot of information come out over the past week, pretty much on an hourly basis, it seems. What has stood out to you overall the most as the information, the new details have come out?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it was very clear to me from day one of seeing the videos and seeing the information that was out there that law enforcement was dealing with an amateur versus a professional hitman, which is some of the other information that was it's been previously put out there. Everything from this guy's tactics to the fact that he had issues using a firearm and clearing the malfunctions, to his movements, to the fact that he showed his face as many times as he did. And overall, this guy's behavior, it was very clear to me that we're dealing with an amateur, and obviously now a lot of new developments here. And I think this case points on so many different things, and I'm seeing some reports now, or a lot of reports actually, which is quite concerning, that this guy's being called the hero by some, which I think also addresses the fact that there may be a greater anger that patients may have towards the healthcare insurance industry.
And it does seem as though the attack had to have been very well planned in advance, probably for quite a while. And I want to get your take as an expert there. Is that how it appears to you as you look at this as a whole?
Absolutely. I think this guy has been planning this for a long time, not just going based on the manifesto that he's published, but you could see him in the video. He was doing surveillance at the location prior to that. He was clearly planning it by using the ghost gun that he has made ahead of time. Putting those weapons together takes some time, getting the parts together, and really to be able to utilize that gun and pull it off effectively. All that would have taken a significant amount of time. Also due to the fact that just the sheer planning of getting to New York City, using the fake IDs, using the cash, having all those things at hand, having a backpack with a change of clothes in it, all that shows me that this was definitely a premeditated attack versus something that happened in the spur of the moment.
And Brian Thompson, the UnitedHealthcare CEO who was killed in this shooting 1 week ago, we are told by some of the family members that it appears he may have received threats prior to all of this happening. What is kind of the standard protocol, I guess, when you have a big CEO like this, or really anyone in a company that is receiving threats and is still, going around? He was going to a meeting there in New York City. So what is the standard protocol? Is there one?
Josh, it's one of the things that it really baffles me that the CEO didn't have an adequate detail with him, considering the threats that were out there. It's really bizarre to me. I'm not quite sure who was in charge of his security currently. I'm not sure who of his staff was responsible for that. But the fact that he was unprotected without any detail is absolutely, it should have never have happened. Generally speaking, the protocol, if an individual like that receives threats, or even beforehand, because he is an individual at risk, considering his positions and considering the amount of threats that are just out there, not only for him, but to CEOs in the healthcare, health insurance industry. And it just required a significant detail, threat intelligence, which a lot of times threat intelligence can prevent a tragedy from the first place by identifying these bad actors and then upping security when it's needed. and then really having an effective team in place. And when we talk about security, we talk about physical security. For most people, it's kind of like the same thing, but there's so many different layers to it. And really having an adequate executive protection team of individuals that are trained, experienced, that are armed, because in this situation, if they wouldn't have been armed, they would have probably been useless. And really having those effective measures in place, having that planning, having the advanced work done, where you have now your team is going out there ahead of time to know where the principal is going. Having 360 security, which in this case would have been crucial to identify the attacker. All those things were clearly not done. I mean, he was there by himself, and it's really it's bizarre to me that this guy was unguarded, and clearly this was largely a result of this tragedy from being unable to happen.
And what you're looking at here on your screen is actually video from Altoona, Pennsylvania. That is the McDonald's where he was taken into custody. Can you tell me about some of the methods that law enforcement used amid this investigation that went on for several days prior to the arrest? Now, it sounds like people at that McDonald's, and that's some of the surveillance there, actually recognized the suspect. But I imagine that the work by law enforcement is what was able to tie the suspect to the crime.
Sure, and back to my original note that anybody who's calling this guy a hero, the real heroes in this case are the NYPD detectives. I know have a lot of friends and former colleagues that are NYPD detectives. It's one of the greatest law enforcement agencies that we have in the country. So hats off to those individuals. Those are the real heroes. The individuals at the McDonald's who called it in, those guys are the heroes. The rookie police officer in that town in Pennsylvania who walked in the establishment, recognized him. Again, those are all the real heroes in the story. Now, as far as the methods utilized, well, first and foremost, it was, you have New York City. It's one of our American cities that has the most amount of surveillance equipment that you could possibly think of. Facial recognition cameras. It's really hard to go anywhere in New York City and not be under video surveillance. And that really drastically helped these detectives in not only identifying this individual ultimately, but also tracking his movements and tracking him from the crime scene to Central Park, and then subsequently to the later on locations that he visited. But really, it comes down to using technology and old school detective work that these homicide detectives utilized to ultimately working on identifying this individual, and now also the detectives that are working on putting together the pieces to ultimately secure a prosecution for the subject. You mentioned the evidence that was out there, the fingerprints that were found in the wrapper and the water bottle. The gun was identified in NYPD crime lab. From what I've learned today, I had just made a discovery that the ballistics of the firearm that was recovered and the shell casings on the ground is in fact a 100% match. So again, it's really overall this comprehensive approach of teamwork, of solid law enforcement work that I'm very confident in will ultimately lead to this guy's conviction.
And I do have to ask, kind of going in reverse a little bit to something that we were just discussing. A lot of people do hear a story like this, and maybe they are a CEO or someone with their company that is fairly high up, and there was a lot of concern expressed after this did happen. So I wanted to get your take as far as what people can do to kind of make sure that they are safe in a situation like this. And this goes back to talking about the security that you were discussing a short time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all comes down to just having a security plan in place, having your threat intelligence in place to identify what are the risk factors, getting an overall plan put in place to identify what threats am I facing, and then having an expert come in and identify the solutions necessary to mitigate those risk factors. And it's really, unfortunately, we live in a day and age where these attacks, have happened in the past. They're going to continue to happen again, which is also concerning because now we have the risk of copycat attacks, and really we have to take security more seriously. And I think this is a tragic situation that really highlights the fact that security is a necessity. It's not just a burden. It's not just an expense. It's really a necessity. And investing in the right security will save lives. Again, it really comes down to having that overall threat assessment done, doing a threat intelligence, and then having experts come in to identify procedures that the individual needs in order to be protected.
And I have to ask my final question here. As far as questions that you still have that you hope will be answered soon, obviously there's still a lot of questions. This is only a week into the investigation, but what question or maybe questions do you have that you hope will be answered soon?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall it comes back down to one of the questions I had is why was this individual unprotected, and then secondly, it's the suspect in this case here. It's really not your typical suspect, right? I mean, this guy is Ivy League educated. He came from a good family, to what we're learning. He didn't have any priors to what it appears. And it's really, I think one of the questions that a lot of people are asking themselves, why this guy, right? What happened there, and what happened in his head where he suddenly turned and decided to premeditate this attack. There's a lot of speculation out there now that he's some understanding he had chronic back pain and he could have been on some kind of medications, that he stopped taking the medications that have something to do with it, or what happened in his life where he decided to go out there and plan this attack. And it seems like also that this is the attack on Brian Thompson wasn't the only attack that he had planned. It seems like that he had other attacks planned, and so I think, really a question that the nation right now is asking, is why did this all happen, and what is and again, it comes back to my original point. It really also raises greater awareness of this anger that patients seem to have, and I think that's something that needs to be looked into further as well.
All right, Toby Braun, thank you so much for taking the time to join us as always to help break down a very involved subject here. Anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
No, I think it comes down to is, this suspect would not be in custody if it wasn't for a civilian in a common location in McDonald's that saw something and said something. And I think it's so important in our day and age as Americans. We have to stick together. If you see something, say something, and it can make our country a whole lot safer, because law enforcement is thin. There's only so many resources out there, and it's really oftentimes it comes down to responsible citizens to step up when their time is being called. And then secondly, it's maintain vigilance, right? We live in a day and age where we're all on our phone and we're all just distracted by everything that's around us. Maintain that situational awareness, maintain that 360 security, and really be vigilant what's out there, because unfortunately, again, threats are out there, and the only way we can prevent that is if we're vigilant, and if we take the proper precautions to prevent any risks and mitigate those factors. So.
All right, Toby, thank you again for taking the time to be here with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Josh.
And I do want to pop up this image just coming in from our Fox 5 New York team as we continue to follow the latest on the investigation here, still developing, and there are a lot of questions. Now, we are told by our Fox 5 New York team that a person walking their dog over in Central Park found a Ziploc bag of bullets in the bushes Tuesday, which police now believe is tied to Luigi Mangione, the suspect accused of murdering UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Fox 5 New York exclusively obtaining the image here showing that bag of bullets, and it was from police. Now, they say the person was walking near East 81st and 85th Street when they saw the bag, noticing similar markings found on shell casings. Again, that photo just coming in from our Fox 5 New York team. And I do want to check in with them, as they do have a team of reporters following all of the details here. You're going to listen to our Fox 5 New York team on Live Now from Fox.
Well, major developments tonight in the investigation into the shooting death of UnitedHealthcare UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Police say a gun was found on Luigi Mangione, the suspect in this case, that matches shell casings found at the scene.
All right, Fox 5's Linda Schmidt live in the newsroom with that and other details of the case we broke first here on Fox 5. Linda.
Yeah, that's right. Well, first of all, let me tell you this. Law enforcement exclusively providing Fox 5 a picture of a bag of bullets found in Central Park that are believed to be linked to Luigi Mangione. And by the way, the evidence against him appears to be piling up. Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch today saying his fingerprints from the gun that he was packing on him when he was arrested in Pennsylvania match fingerprints found at the murder scene. The lawyer for 26-year-old Luigi Mangione says he has not seen any evidence linking his client to last week's assassination of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. But NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch announcing today the gun Mangione had with him when he was arrested at McDonald's in Pennsylvania is now at the NYPD crime lab.
We were able to match that gun to the 3 shell casings that we found in Midtown at the scene of the homicide.
The commissioner goes on to say that Mangione's fingerprints also match those found on a snack bar wrapper and a water bottle that he bought at Starbucks shortly before the murder.
We're also able at our crime lab to match the person of interest's fingerprints with fingerprints that we found on both the water bottle and the Kind bar near the scene of the homicide in Midtown.
More evidence has also turned up in Central Park. Fox 5 exclusively obtaining this picture from law enforcement of a plastic Ziploc bag with bullets police believe belong to Mangione. A passerby walking a dog near East 81st Street in Central Park spotted the bag. The bullets have etchings. Bullets found at the murder scene had the words deny, depose, and defend. Critics say those words are the tactics used by insurance companies to avoid paying insurance claims. Authorities say Mangione had a 3-page handwritten manifesto railing against the insurance industry, as well as a spiral notebook containing some plans for the murder. Mangione also viewed that murder as a symbolic takedown of the insurance industry. Now, he is still in Pennsylvania being held without bail, while New York authorities are working on getting him extradited back here to the city. Steve and Natasha, back upstairs to you.
And that was our Fox 5 New York team. We're going to get Linda Schmidt to join us later on today to help break down those latest details. But again, we did get new details that continue to come in here about the suspected killer, Luigi Mangione. Now, I do want to talk more about who he is and his family, what we've learned here over the last several days. Want to bring in Thomas Moronic, a lawyer, local radio host, and family acquaintance to talk more about that. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course. Well, first off, I want to ask you about how you found out that Luigi had been arrested and what was going through your mind when you realized who his family is and who he is.
I had heard on the news wires, I can't remember exactly where, it might have been Fox for all I know, that there'd been an arrest that had been made in this case. And I saw that there had been a local connection. And when I saw the last name, I thought, is this, no, it can't be. Could this be the same Mangione family that I know and have appeared on their station as a host for 20 years? Could it be the same family? And then I saw the pictures and it sure looked like a member of the Mangione family. He certainly bared the resemblance. I was just in shock. I couldn't believe it. This is the last person you would suspect, given the family that he's from, which is so esteemed and respected in certainly Baltimore County, but really all over the whole Baltimore region.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the family? I mean, you said they were well respected. They are well respected. Tell me about who they are, because it sounds as though they are very well known in that area.
Absolutely. The family is a very generous family. They donate money to charity. They have a foundation that I think has $4.5 million in it. for which they give out some of that every year. They have donated money that has adorned Loyola University, Maryland, the pool named after them. They're very generous as far as the St. Leo's Italian festival that they do every year. And from a personal perspective, when they threw a holiday party, this is years ago when Mr. Nick Mangione Sr. was still alive, they spared no expense at one of the best Italian restaurants in Baltimore. They took everybody out and treated us like a member of their family. And they have a huge family, but that's sort of how the experience went if you were part of WCBM and you were one of the hosts or even an advertising executive. Everybody felt very welcome. I'll share this other story as well. My talk show, the Tom Moore Show, oftentimes would veer into realms that they wouldn't usually travel on the station. Sometimes you get guests who are very controversial, sometimes expressing views that perhaps the rest of the station you might not hear a lot. But they didn't try to censor me. They just wanted a good talk show that was provocative and supported my ability to do that. And I couldn't thank them enough for it.
And you and I had kind of discussed this, but you don't know necessarily a lot about Luigi. It's unclear maybe if you had met him in passing or anything like that, right?
That's right, Josh. I may have met him in passing at an event for WCBM, but I don't recall it. The family that I knew best included Nick Mangione Sr. and then his wife, Mary, but more particularly his son, Nick Jr., who was president of the station for most of the time that I was on. But Nick Jr. took over the ownership from Nick Sr., and other members of the family were involved as well. And he really carried on the same tradition, supporting Good Talk Radio and wanting to see the best shows be on the radio. And that's the way I was treated anyway.
What are people in the community saying about all of this? I imagine that there's a lot of discussion about what's happened, the arrest itself. So what are you hearing overall?
It's very interesting. Some in the community have been supportive of the Mangione family, which I think is the right way to go with this. There are others who have tried to sort of implicate them somehow because of the allegations about a member of their family. And a friend of mine posted on Facebook about this, and he said, it's simply wrong to take your feelings about what happened. It was a horrible tragedy, a CEO gunned down in the streets of New York, just a terrible situation. But to take that and somehow instill that on the family, it's terrible that some people would do that, but I believe that the majority of people are not doing that, and they understand this is still a very respected family, and they're dealing with a lot of trauma now as well because of the personal experience of having a member of their family be accused of something like this.
Have you had a chance to speak to any of the family members since all of the news broke?
I have not. My show ended in December of 2023, so I've not been in regular contact with the Mangiones since that time. But at the same time, I do touch base with some of the folks at WCBM. I had some conversations with them actually not too long ago. So, but I know that no one at WCBM is talking about this, understandably. It's something where they put out a statement from Delegate Nino Mangione expressing their shock and their horror about this and offering condolences to the family. And I think that's probably all you will hear from the family.
My last question for you, your thoughts now, as there's been a little bit of time, you've had time to process this overall. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, as a criminal defense attorney, my thoughts are that everybody in this country is entitled to the presumption of innocence. But particularly for Luigi Mangione, obviously, the facts that are being alleged, and particularly with some of the evidence today where the gun apparently matched the one used in the shooting, all of that is obviously concerning from the perspective of his defense. I think the important factor is just let the facts come out. and focus on what this is really about, which is a tragedy, the loss of a father, the loss of a son, the loss of an ex-husband. And even though some have tried to politicize this, I'm not saying that there's not important issues in talking about claims and claim denials. That's a separate issue. That's an important separate issue. But the focus should be on the tragedy that occurred and getting to the truth.
All right, Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and talk a little bit more about the Mangione family. Is there anything else you want to add before I let you go?
I think you covered it, Josh. It was great to be on with you.
Thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. We appreciate it. All right, everybody, the time now 5:25 on the East Coast and 2:25 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and I'm here for the next several hours to bring you all of your top stories and live events from across the country and across the world. We do have to head to a quick 2-minute commercial break, the first one of the hour, but a lot more live news to get to in just a few. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 527 on the East Coast and 227 on the West Coast. I do want to head over to Houston, Texas. That is where police are holding a news conference here momentarily, all related to a burglary and a shooting. I do want to pop up the audio here so we can listen in, as it looks like that is getting underway.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Perfect. Let me get you to please say and spell your name, please, and give us your title.
Brian Bowie, B-R-Y-A-N. Last name is Bowie, B-U-I. And I'm a lieutenant with the Houston Police Department.
Tell us what happened.
All right, at approximately 3 p.m. at 5703 Heather Bloom Drive, there was a father and daughter inside the house, and they were in their room, and they heard somebody come into the residence, and the daughter possibly thought it was a burglary that was happening. She came out with her pistol and shot the 50-year-old suspect several times.
Which house was it? Can you point to it?
It's going to be this house in this corner right here.
And the burglar came in through the front door?
It came in through, I believe, yes, the front door.
Do you have any idea if he was actually a burglar? Like, is there anything that would indicate that he was here to steal from them?
We're unsure yet how the entry was. We don't see any forced entry or anything like that. Just he made entry to the residence and, coming into the house, and the daughter got scared and then shot the possible suspect multiple times.
So, any charges that could be?
As of right now, it's unknown. We're waiting until homicide. Homicide just showed up. We're doing further investigations. There's only the information that we have right now. So once we be able to get more information, we could be able to provide. For right now, we're just limited to what we have and what we know from what the daughter and father said to us.
Can you give us an idea on the demeanor of the daughter? Like, how is she doing right now? Is she kind of freaked out? How is she feeling?
Yeah, she's, kind of spooked. Anybody that come into your residence, you don't know who they are. You'll have a demeanor of, being kind of a little bit scared of what's going on, especially, firing at somebody. She's firing their pistol, and then could be, traumatizing to the person.
So was this person killed inside the house or outside?
It was inside the house, ma'am. He was probably maybe 5 feet from the front door.
Total stranger? Have they seen the guy in the neighborhood or anything like that?
They said they don't know who he is.
Was he armed?
No. Nothing was found on him.
Do you know if there were any words exchanged between?
I don't believe there were any words. The daughter didn't say that. Just say, they saw somebody coming inside, and she shot her firearm.
Have they been burglarized in the past?
We are unsure about that.
And was the father involved in this at all?
No, the father was in a separate room. That's what they told me. And then the daughter came out after she heard somebody coming in. That's when she came out with the firearm and shot the suspect.
Any idea how old she is?
No, she probably, I didn't get the age of how old the daughter was.
Like an adult?
Probably looks like she was in her 30s.
Got it. Any idea how many times he was shot or where he was shot?
Supposedly he was, there was about 7 or 8 shell casings that were found, and he was shot 3 times in the abdomen.
Anything else?
No, that's all the information I have. Do you have any other questions? Anybody? No? Good? All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, a very brief news conference right there with Houston police provided by our Fox Houston station as they are on the scene gathering more of the details at this point. It's unclear if it necessarily was a burglary or what the situation was. Still so many questions, but we know that according to police, a man walked into this home here and was shot by a woman inside. It sounds like several times. As we gather more information from our Fox Houston team, we'll make sure to bring that to you right here on Live Now from Fox. Do have to head to a quick 2-minute commercial break now at 5:32 on the East Coast and 2:32 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and you're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, and I do want to head to some international news that we have been following here. The Israeli military now saying that it's destroyed 70 to 80% of the strategic military capabilities of ousted Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and his regime. This comes after a 48-hour bombing campaign dubbed Bashan Arrow that the Israel Defense Forces says was aimed at preventing these, quote, very advanced weapons from falling into the hands of the wrong people. The IDF and the Israeli Air Force saying they carried out more than 300 strikes against those targets in Syria. Want to bring in a friend of the show here to talk a little bit more about the situation developing there. So let's bring in Mark Chandler, Director of Government Relations and Professor of Practice at Coastal Carolina University, also a former senior defense intelligence official. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
You're welcome, and good evening, Josh.
Good evening. Well, first off, I want to talk about how significant this is for Israel, because we're talking 70 to 80% of those weapons and just materials that were used there by Syria. So how significant is it, but also why is Israel working to destroy all of that?
Well, I think this is a very significant move by the Israeli, and it's a strategic military decision. When you look at what they're doing, they are methodically taking out a lot of the offensive capability that Syria had left behind. So if you will, a big focus is on the aircraft and the naval craft that can conduct those offensive operations, but a very strategic and very prudent move is taking out the chemical munitions. And that's what Israel started with the other day. You know, they're actually taking out targets that we, the U.S., had on a target list years ago, but the Obama administration made a last-minute decision not to take those out. And subsequent to us not taking out those targets, the Syrian regime, along with the Russians and the Iranians, used those against the Syrian people. So you can see that was a strategic mistake we made that Israel is not going to repeat. And so they don't want these to fall into the hands of any kind of government that's going to take over, whether it's an extremist government or something that may be more moderate. We just don't know. So I think this is a prudent move by Israel, and one that, since they have the military advantage right now, it's one that they're going to take. Remember, they created this operation, or this vacuum, if you will, with the defeat of Hezbollah and the Iranians inside Syria. So I think it's a next logical step, if you will.
And going a bit deeper into that, we know that the U.S. and the U.K. have said that they are all for this situation that is happening. But then you have Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt who are against this. So can you explain some of the background there on why you have some countries that are saying this is a good move, and then you have others who are saying not so much?
Well, first off, as I said, I think the U.S. is appreciative that Israel's kind of cleaning up the mess it left behind by not taking out some of those weapons of mass destruction when we had the chance about 10 years ago. So that's part of it. The second part, you know, the U.S.-UK has designated HTS a terrorist organization. I mean, when you look at the leader, Jawani, he actually traces back to 2003, my time in Iraq, when he was fighting against us, and he was starting to follow the ISIS leadership and the al-Qaeda leadership at that time. So he has ties to both those terrorist organizations, regardless of the moderate approach it seems that he's, at least on a public face, putting out now. We still have a $5 or $10 million bounty on Jawani's head for what he did against us, back in 2003, 2005, and then fighting with ISIS and al-Qaeda. He actually headed al-Nusra Front when al-Qaeda was trying to stand up during the Civil War. So that's the U.S. and UK perspective. But what you're seeing with the Arab states, you're seeing a combination of what they did to fight against the Syrian regime, but also some rapprochement that they've had in the last year to try to bring Assad back into the fold as an Arab state. Turkey, I can talk a long time about Turkey, but Turkey has its own initiative and own ideas of what it wants to see come out of this.
The fall of Assad, what impact is that likely to have, not just on Israel, but when you look at the Middle East as a whole, when you step back, what impact is likely there?
Well, this is something I wrote my students about this week. And what I told them is that, this is a seminal event in history that you see taking place in the Middle East. You could see a reshaping of the Middle East as we look at that. If I can put Syria in perspective for just a minute, when I go back at the start of the Civil War 13 years ago, and if you were to look at a map of Syria today and color code it by all the different rebel factions, and then cut that shapes out, what you would have is a jigsaw puzzle of significant proportions scattered across all of Syria. Now, wait 1 week, and guess what? Those colors change and the shapes change, and that is the nature of the cultural, the religion, the different sects that are all inside Syria today. Now, they're vying for support. You had one of the key leaders, the HTS group, that kind of has led this charge, but you still have a different faction in the South. You've got U.S.-supported efforts out in the Far East. You've got Kurdish efforts that Turkey absolutely despises up in the north and in the far eastern part of Syria. And then, as I said, you had Arab states involved in complete fighting against Assad throughout there. And sometimes those Arab states would have their factions fight one another. So what's going to come out of this? I think if anyone says they're an expert, including myself, that we know what's going to come out, I think we're way too early to tell that. I think you have to look at this change being something that could be as significant as when Yugoslavia fell, and now you have all these different Balkan states there. You could see a fracturing of Syria into multiple states, or something that's kind of forced together again. So it's really a dangerous time, even though I know that the leadership, the transition is talking about 6 to 18 months trying to bring some sort of rule to Syria. But Syria is kind of a hodgepodge of different cultures, tribes, and religions thrown in there. I think what Israel did, securing its borders, taking out some of the offensive weapons, is probably the prudent move, and then to kind of stay on the defensive. Remember, Syria's invaded Israel twice, unprovoked, in the 60s and the 70s.
And I want to go a little bit deeper. As you said, not everyone can look into the future and see what is going to happen. But a big question that we've seen posed a lot, and I just want to get your take on it overall. I'm sure your answer will probably pretty much be the same. It's a waiting game. But we've had so many people who have asked, what does the fall of Assad mean for the supreme leader of Iran? Is that a possibility there that it could be impacted?
Well, I'm not going to say wait and see, but let's wait and see. What I think we have to look at is there's a similarity between two regimes that are both authoritarian, and Assad fell apart because he just had that ruthless authoritarian nature to him. The difference here with Iran is you have the Persian culture in Iran, so it's a little bit more homogeneous structure and build up or make up inside Iran. But what I do think you're going to see is Iran is taking notice. Let me go back to the fact that Iran is actually weakened with the defeat or the beatdown that Hezbollah has taken. They've lost a staunch ally in Syria since 1979. Those two have been close allies. So you start to see that fracturing. The supreme leader is going to take notice. I think what you may see is a kind of turning inward a little bit to kind of recalibrate its strength. Obviously, the Israeli strikes back in October were a little bit more severe and meaningful had a significant impact on the regime because we haven't seen a retaliation. So I think you're going to see a focus inward to kind of build up and then try to figure out how they can go forward without the Syrian ally to help Hezbollah build back up. So I don't think you're going to see a crumbling. Matter of fact, you might see some more crackdowns. If you see any kind of protest inside Iran, they'll come out a lot stronger on it. But I think they're going to move forward and focus on what they can do to protect themselves.
Let's head over to Gaza and talk a little bit more about the situation between Israel and Hamas overall. We've heard this time and time again, and you and I have discussed this, but there are some rumblings, so to speak, that we may be closer to a ceasefire and hostage release deal between Israel and Hamas. Does that appear to be the case just based on the information that you've seen coming out over the past several hours and maybe days? Are we any closer now than we were months ago?
Well, I have to say, Josh, that I am more optimistic these days than I have been in past interviews. When I start to look at this, a lot of the Arab countries, Qatar, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, their press has released statements that Hamas is saying, they're open to more discussions. They're going to be more amenable to certain things and even discuss the release of some of the names of potential hostages to be released. So that to me is positive. Now, today there was a Hamas spokesman in Lebanon who came out and said, no, that's not true. We're not going to do that. However, I think since Sinwar's death, since Israel killed Sinwar, you've seen more openness from Hamas to consider a negotiation. And I think that there probably is some truth to some of these leaks that are coming out from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. So I think we're moving forward positively. But with anything to do with these negotiations, it can slip up and fall apart, at any time. And I just want to say, getting those hostages out, the 100 that are left, but maybe 50 are alive, that's going to be critical to any kind of moving forward. But Hamas has even said, and this was a couple of weeks ago, they're open to leaving Israeli troops inside Gaza. So that to me is positive. I don't know, you've asked me before if it'll happen before the inauguration. That could be pushing it, or we could have some openings in the next couple of weeks.
My last question, you're kind of an expert when it comes to the Houthis, and we haven't talked about them a lot. But recently we did hear from the U.S., maybe within 24 hours ago, that they had actually thwarted an attack, so to speak. So what do we know about that, and what are the Houthis kind of up to? Are they still as powerful as they maybe were months ago?
Well, to answer your last question first, I think they're starting to feel the pain of some Israeli and U.S. airstrikes that had taken place back in October and early November. But as you point out, they attacked 2 U.S. destroyers just this past weekend, that were escorting 3 commercial ships through the Bab el-Mandeb and the Gulf of Aden. So they're still viable in that. 1 week ago, they did the same thing. Those same 2 destroyers were attacked while escorting 3 other commercial ships through the same area. So the Houthis still have a capability. They're always going to have that capability. I think putting Iran back on its heels, if you will, what Israel did, is kind of slowing down the resupply of the Houthis, but they're still there. So you're going to look at how this plays out. They're still going to try to attack. Matter of fact, they did try a UAV and a missile attack on southern Israel about the middle of last week. So they're doing what they can, but their supplies, they have reduced supplies. So as long as we can keep those down and stop Iran from resupplying them, they're going to kind of peter out a little bit. Not go away, but I think you're still going to see them kind of husband their assets, if you will, for these bold attacks like they did the last 2 weekends on Navy destroyers.
All right. Mark Chandler, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, regardless of what time of day it is. Thank you again. Anything you want to add before I let you go?
You're quite welcome, Josh. Yeah, I would just like to add something about a young man named Austin Tisch. Austin is a former Marine officer, but then he got out of the Marine Corps and he became a journalist. And in doing so, he worked for a lot of the different news agencies. He was captured in August of 2012. First he was captured by some of the same rebels that are in there in the different factions, and the Syrian regime took control of him. I just don't want us to forget the side of that. while everything's happening, hopefully, we can get his release. There's strong indications he's still alive, but I just want to give that shout out for Austin and maybe try to get him freed at the same time out of Syria.
And I was going to point out, we heard from some folks here in the U.S., some high-up officials over the last several days that there is evidence that he is alive. So hopefully he is released soon. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. We appreciate it.
Josh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And I do want to take you out to this beautiful shot that we have over the White House in D.C. We are going to head to a quick break, but so much more live coverage to get to in just a matter of minutes. You're watching Live Now from Fox. My name is Josh Breslow, and we will be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 5:51 on the East Coast and 2:51 on the West Coast. Senator Kennedy, and we tried to bring this to you a bit earlier, but he met with Kash Patel, who is Trump's pick, to lead the FBI after we learned that Wray, a bit earlier on today, did announce that he plans to retire, to step down from that position. Kennedy did make some brief comments, only about 3 minutes in length, so I do want to play that for you here, and these were right after that meeting.
We did. Very fascinating. Yeah. What did you think of your meeting with Mr. Patel?
It was good. We had a very frank discussion about what's working at the FBI and what's not working, and I picked his brain a little bit on some foreign affairs questions, since he has a deep background in foreign affairs and counterintelligence, and it was a good meeting.
Is it the right move for Chris Wray to step aside as he is?
Yeah, I think probably so. When your CEO wants to change, it doesn't matter whether you have an employment contract or not. You're better off as the employee sitting down with the CEO and having a frank adult discussion if you care about the institution. And I think Mr. Wray does. And I think it was the wise thing to do.
What does that mean, logistically, with Patel coming in and Wray stepping down early and being this?
I don't know. I don't know. Knowing if Mr. Patel's confirmed and knowing Director Wray as I do, I want to believe that they'll sit down and talk, and that Mr. Wray will help the new FBI director any way he can, and I believe that the director will do that, because I think he cares about the institution. We all do. We all just want the FBI to work, and I have my feelings, I think, are well known. James Comey broke it. He hurt that agency badly, because he put his own politics and the politics of his buddies first. And it hurt that agency. And the agency needs to be fixed. And I just, for the last several years, we on Judiciary have been frustrated about whether it has been fixed. I'm not saying it hadn't been fixed. Maybe it has, and I just don't know it. But one of the things that got my attention is when they paid Mr. Peter Strzok, after what he did, paid him $2 million in a lawsuit settlement and wouldn't explain to me why they did it. That got my attention.
What's Christopher Wray's legacy?
Don't know.
Is there additional urgency to get Patel confirmed now that Wray's stepping down?
I don't think it makes any difference. We're going to go through the confirmation process. We'll go through it carefully, like we always do. And all the nominees, hopefully, will look the committee members in the eye in front of God and country and tell them answer the questions and tell them about their plans.
Did you talk to?
I got to run, guys.
Did you talk to Mr. Patel about any desire to go after Trump's political enemies? Did that come up at all?
I haven't heard either President Trump or Mr. Patel say that's an issue. I think there's been an assumption among some members of the press that that's an issue. But I haven't heard either of them say that they're going to use the job to go after anybody's political enemies other than America's political enemies, which is what the FBI is supposed to do. I think there have been accounts of hot rhetoric that people have used in the past. I've said things in the past that I guess you could describe as hot rhetoric, but that's all going to come up in a confirmation hearing. I have every confidence that my Democratic colleagues will bring up that, and many Republicans will, and Mr. Patel will be able to address it.
All right, that was Senator John Kennedy after he did meet with Kash Patel. That is Trump's pick to lead the FBI after we learned earlier on today that Wray will step down from that position. Do have to head to our final 2-minute commercial break of the hour, but so much more live news to get to in just a matter of minutes. My name is Josh Breslow, and you're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. Another update to a story that we have been covering here. It's 5:58 on the East Coast and 2:58 on the West Coast. Over to Wisconsin. Faked his own drowning and left his wife and 3 kids for Eastern Europe willingly returned to the U.S. after 4 months and was charged Wednesday with obstructing an intense lake search for his body. The criminal complaint charging Ryan Borgwat with misdemeanor obstruction offers a detailed account of how the 45-year-old pulled off that disappearance, including how he struggled to emerge from the water, almost didn't make it through customs on his way overseas, and was living in the country of Georgia when he realized he had left too many clues behind. Police say he turned himself into authorities at the Green Lake County Sheriff's Office in Wisconsin. That was yesterday. A judge entered a not guilty plea on his behalf during a very brief court appearance today. He was released on a $500 bail, but he will only have to pay that amount if he misses a future court date. A news conference was held as all of this was unfolding, just about 10 minutes in length. Want to play that for you right here on Live Now from Fox.
Good morning, everyone. We meet again. I'm just going to read you a release that we have. On August 12, 2024, the story of the missing kayaker began with the suspected drowning death of Ryan Borgwat. On October 7, 2024, the search for Ryan ended, and the investigation efforts took a new direction. When we learned that Ryan had left the United States, and he most certainly was not in Green Lake. That was our biggest thing, that we knew he wasn't in our lake, thanks to many partners. On December 10th, Ryan arrived on U.S. soil. He was then booked into the correctional facility and is awaiting his initial court appearance. And one of my press conferences, I said, could be a really good Christmas. I want to say thanks again to Keith Cormack of Bruce's Legacy, diver Charlie DeGroat, the Wisconsin DNR, MOCIC, Homeland Security, the FBI, Department of Justice, Division, Criminal Investigations, the Green Lake County and the Green Lake County community, the Watertown community, but most of all, the Green Lake County Sheriff's Office. They're the ones that kept us going. I couldn't be more proud of them. of what they did for a family. We didn't give up. And we can stand here today feeling relieved. And I have one of my detectives here, Detective Jeremiah Hansen, who played a big key, and my chief deputy, Chief Matt Vanderkolk, that stuck with me, and we had a great outcome. And there's one more thing I want to say thank you to, and that is to you folks, the media. You take some raps sometimes, all right? But through this whole case, you were very good partners with us. And I appreciate that. And I want to say thank you. Is there any questions?
Sheriff, I know last time you had mentioned that you knew he was somewhere in Eastern Europe, but were unsure exactly where. Have you been able to determine where he was and who he was with?
At this time, we're still putting that together, so I can't release that yet.
Is he cooperating with you guys? Have you been able to speak with him in person?
He's cooperated with us. He came back to the United States.
Do you know if he's had any contact with his wife and kids since the last time we spoke here last month?
That I can't release.
Can you detail how he returned back to the United States? Can you detail the step-by-step process of how he got back here?
I got on an airplane and landed in the United States.
Were there any other agencies involved in that
No.
getting him here? What country was he in that he flew from?
I can't release that.
Did he come willingly, Sheriff?
Yeah.
Has he said what compelled him to come back to Wisconsin?
His family, I guess.
And did he come back on his own, or?
Yes.
Was he
Yes, he is.
extradited?
No. Nope, he came back on his own.
So what charges could he be filed against him? You said he's awaiting his initial appearance.
Yep, he's waiting initial appearance. Everything was sent up to the DA's office, and they'll be the ones that will review it.
What were the charging recommendations that you referred to the district attorney's office?
There was a number of them. Obstructing.
Did he notify law enforcement in advance before he came home, or did you find out after he returned to U.S. soil?
He notified us. We were in contact with him.
What international airport did he fly into?
I'm not going to release that right now.
Was he taken into custody by law enforcement at that airport, or did he return to Green Lake and turn himself in?
He returned on his own.
When is his first court appearance?
That I'm not sure. Could be today. That's up to the courts.
Have you spoken with his family since his return, and could you share any of maybe some of their feelings and what they may have had to say following the news?
We just briefly spoke to them, and I can only imagine how they feel.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the conversations that took place between your department and Ryan from the last press conference to today?
No, that we don't want to release.
I mean, you kind of explained it, Sheriff, but how are you feeling and how is your department feeling now knowing that he is back in Wisconsin on U.S. soil ahead of the holidays like your plea was last time we talked?
Relieved. I'm very proud of what he did in my department. But now when we walk out, we continue to do what we were doing all through this whole process. We never stopped. We're continuing to serve our community in whatever call we had. And that's, the help of my department and
So
my whole department.
He turned himself in here at the Green Lake Justice Center yesterday.
Yep.
Is he going to have to reimburse the county for the search effort?
That is part of the restitution that we present to the court.
What do you know about the woman he was involved with, and did she have a role at all in compelling you?
I do not know that. So,
Could anyone else be facing any charges for aiding him or anything?
could you, one more?
Could anyone else be facing any charges for aiding him or anything like that?
No.
Sheriff, last you spoke, you said that in communication with him, he wanted to make things right or figure out a way out of this. Has he given any indication on his mindset now that he's back?
I can't release that. That's all part of the investigation yet going on. But I just want to thank everybody again for all the support that they have given my department and the help, the partnership. And I'm really happy to see individual, one of our divers, that took this to heart as much as we did. But that just speaks volumes of communities and what people are all about.
Could you speak to what it was, whether that was the efforts of Detective Hansen, right, or your chief deputy? Was it in those conversations? What was it in those conversations with Mr. Borgward that made him change his mind?
That's going to be up to him someday. But we're not going to release that. But it was one thing that worked in our favor. We brought a dad back on his own accord. So thank you, and have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Sheriff.
All right, that was a news conference there out of Green Lake County, Wisconsin, as the kayaker, who officials say faked his own death, did return to the U.S. on his own accord there and has now been charged with a misdemeanor. You saw his photo there, the booking photo that was released by authorities. The time now is 6:09 on the East Coast and 3:09 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and I'm here for the next couple hours to bring you all of your top stories and live events from across the country and across the world. Do have to head to a quick 2-minute commercial break, the first one of the hour, but a lot more news to get to in just a few. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 6:11 on the East Coast and 3:11 on the West Coast. Want to get back to a big story that we have been following here over the last week on Live Now from Fox as new details continue to emerge about the suspect in last week's murder of the UnitedHealthcare CEO in Midtown Manhattan. Investigators have made a fingerprint match between the suspected killer, Luigi Mangione, and evidence near the crime scene in New York City. That information released earlier on today by New York City's police commissioner. Commissioner Jessica Tisch saying the fingerprints were found on a snack bar wrapper and a water bottle purchased at a nearby coffee shop while the gunman awaited his target. Tisch also added that the gun found on Mangione matched the shell casings found at the site of the shooting. Mangione is being held under maximum security at the State Correctional Institute in Huntington, Pennsylvania, placed in a cell by himself. That is according to officials there. We're told that he was denied bail during a court appearance Monday in Pennsylvania and is fighting extradition to New York. Mangione was arrested earlier this week while at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, when an employee apparently recognized him from photos circulated nationwide by the NYPD. Now, we did have Connor Hansen with Fox News, who has been following all of the details as they do progress here. I do want to send you over to his report with the latest new information.
The NYPD says it has linked the ghost gun found on murder suspect Luigi Mangione to the Manhattan crime scene, along with even more evidence.
Fingerprints that we found on both the water bottle and the Kind bar near the scene of the homicide in Midtown.
Investigators have also recovered a spiral notebook that seems to shed light on the suspect's possible motive. The New York Times is reporting one passage in the notebook reads, quote, "What do? You whack the CEO at the annual parasitic bean counter convention. It's targeted, precise, and doesn't risk innocence." Those who know the suspect are now asking what would drive him to allegedly commit a brazen murder.
The Luigi that I knew and that so many classmates knew was a hardworking, driven, social kid who had everything going for him.
Investigators are looking into the suspect's recent back surgery and trying to piece together his whereabouts after friends and family lost contact with him months ago. Meanwhile, some are supporting the suspect, even offering to help with legal bills, according to his attorney.
Maybe these people are exercising their right to free speech and saying that's the way they're supporting my client.
The suspect is still being held in Pennsylvania, fighting a likely extradition to New York. Officials say he's in a maximum security cell by himself and is not under any kind of psychiatric watch. In New York, Connor Hansen, Fox News.
Connor, thank you. And we also heard, as I mentioned a short time ago, from the NYPD commissioner as well as Mayor Eric Adams in New York. Now, they were holding a news conference that was all related to essentially ghost cars, but they did touch on this situation here. So I do want to play those comments for you now on Live Now from Fox.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chauncey Parker, the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety. On behalf of Mayor Adams, we're here today for an important announcement about the progress of the Mayor and the Governor's multi-agency partnership to remove ghost cars, illegal two-wheel vehicles, and ATVs from the streets of New York City. The Mayor's North Star is always very, very clear, and that is to keep people safe. His strategy is that we do that by partnerships across all agency and community lines. We do that with a strategic plan, and we do that by relentlessly following up to track our progress. He's done that from gun violence to retail theft and every other public safety challenge. Ghost cars are an important part of the Mayor's vision, because ghost cars, one, is people not paying their fair share and cheating and evading tolls and tickets. It's also taking up parking spaces. But from a crime-fighting perspective, ghost cars are used by criminals to evade detection, to do robberies and other kinds of very serious crimes with these cars that cannot be traced. And it is now my honor to introduce the 110th mayor of the greatest city in the world, Mayor Eric Adams.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. We were together this morning at Gracie Mansion with the task force on shoplifting. I was with one DA this morning, DA Katz, and I'm happy to be here with an outstanding DA here in Staten Island, DA McMahon, and joined also by real partners in public safety. Hope Councilman Borelli is able to make it as well. I know he was planning on doing so, but Councilman David Carr and just an outstanding borough president Fasella. They really embrace how we believe that not only is my North Star, but it's the North Star of the city and every resident. We must be safe, and you have to go to all of those areas where public safety is being challenged, and nothing is more important than dealing with the ghost car issue. Many people think that these are harmless, victimless crime or criminal actions, but they're not. They play a major role in some of the crimes that we're seeing taking place throughout our entire city. So I thank Deputy Mayor Parker and his team for just continuing the work that Deputy Mayor Banks started, and you just see a real continuation of our progress. You know, our kids, our families, and New Yorkers deserve to be safe. These cars, as DM Parker indicated, not only are they used to circumvent paying their fines and tolls, but they also are part of the hit and runs. They're part of the robberies that we see. They're part of the illegal pursuits that we see. Just very arrogantly attempting to believe that the law does not apply to them. And earlier, the partnership with the Governor Hochul and state agencies, we've come together to really deal with this issue, pumping the brakes on ghost cars that are coming across our bridges and attempting to avoid the toll and carrying illegal items. And the numbers are impressive. Since taking office, we have removed over 73,000 illegal vehicles off our streets. 73,000. And when you think about that number, 20,000 of them are ghost cars, and over 53,000 are illegal mopeds, unregistered two-wheelers and three-wheelers, bikes and ATVs. We have focused on it. And it had gotten out of control because it was ignored for so long. And we refused to do so. We stated that this city would not be a city of chaos and a city of just people doing whatever they want, and we zeroed in on these vehicles. But what is interesting, that these outlaws use fraudulent, defaced, or non-existent license plates and other illegal vehicles to commit and evade accountability for serious crimes, including shootings, robberies, and hit and runs, as I indicated, as well as just believing that tolls do not apply to them. And when that happens, it increases the impact of the cost of tolling our bridges and our roadways, and everyday New Yorkers have to pick up that cost. That's why this September, we announced a new Ghost Car task force between the Department of Sanitation and the NYPD to remove unregistered, uninsured, and stolen vehicles. We were tackling this problem with the governor and other agencies within the law enforcement community at our tolling booths and bridges, but the partnership with now Police Commissioner Tisch and former Deputy Mayor Banks, they stated, why are we ignoring those vehicles that are parked? We did an analysis and noticed that where we were having many of our shootings in the cities and crime patterns, these vehicles were being parked on our streets, and we zeroed in on them and stated that we will focus on the parked vehicles as well. Targeting parked ghost cars has boosted enforcement and accountability, keeping New Yorkers safe from crime and freeing up parking spots for law-abiding drivers. Through this operation alone, nearly 5,000 parked ghost cars were removed in 10 weeks. 5,000. That was a real indication of a level of comfortability that those who were using our streets to park these illegal cars. And we sent a clear and loud message and stated that it would not be tolerated or accepted. And our interagency city task force launched earlier this year with the state has seized more than 3,000 additional ghost cars on bridges and tunnels. We're not going to stand by while people break the law, defraud our city, and endanger the public. And so, again, I want to thank Police Commissioner Tisch, the NYPD Acting Sanitation Commissioner Javier Lojan, and the Department of Sanitation for this collaboration and coordination, as well as all the other agencies that are involved. This is why we are continuing to be the safest big city in America. I cannot say that enough. And we're continuously seeing crime being driven down in this city. Index crime overall is down over 5.7% in November and over almost 2% overall for the year. And last month alone, we saw a decrease in murder, robberies, burglaries, and grand larcenies, as well as a drop in transit crime and car theft. We're just really continuing the great work. Who's here with us now in a different capacity, Michael Kemper, and what he did when he was running the transit police. We're continuing the foundational good law enforcement work that we're seeing. Our efforts to combat ghost cars fulfills both of these missions, and New York City remains the safest big city because of the commitment and dedication to the officers involved. And I just want to say a special thank you to those detectives that worked on the healthcare shooting, the number of hours they put in around the clock, dedicated to bringing this person to justice off the streets of America in general, but specifically off the streets of our city. And we look forward to prosecuting him to the full extent of the law.
Thank you, Mayor Adams. It's now my honor to introduce the Police Commissioner of the greatest police department in the world, NYPD Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Adams, Deputy Mayor Parker, and all of our state and local partners for being here today. Ghost plates and the vehicles that use them have been a plague on our city's streets since the pandemic. And for too long, they were tolerated as just a toll-evading nuisance. But this administration finally said enough. Last March, we started at the bridges and tunnels, pulling over ghost cars entering the city. Then in September, we began targeting ghost cars as they sat parked in our neighborhoods, all for the same purpose: removing these unregistered, untraceable, and illegal vehicles from our streets. And as the mayor said, this year alone, we've seized more than 7,500 ghost cars. This includes more than 5,000 seizures in just 3 months by the joint NYPD DSNY pilot program, a program that's being renewed based on its significant success. This is not just about defrauding the DMV or avoiding tolls or avoiding red light and speed cameras. More and more, these vehicles are being used in the commission of violent crimes. And we are seeing the same photocopied fake plates used on different vehicles as they flee crime scenes, speed through school zones, and cause collisions with no regard for other motorists, cyclists, or pedestrians. But the days of operating these illegal ghost cars with impunity are over. We are listening to New Yorkers who are telling us loud and clear that they want these vehicles off of their streets and out of their neighborhoods. They want them towed, they want them seized, and they want them gone. I heard these pleas as a sanitation commissioner. I hear them now as police commissioner, and our interagency task forces are fully committed to this work. The combined efforts of the NYPD, sanitation, the MTA, the New York State Police, the New York City Sheriff's Office, the Port Authority Police Department, the DMV, and others are sending a very clear message. If you drive a ghost car, scooter, or moped, you will be pulled over. And when necessary, you will be arrested and the vehicle impounded. Or if you park a ghost vehicle anywhere in our neighborhoods, we will remove it. Tens of thousands of these vehicles have already been seized over the past 3 years. And although we've reached a milestone for these seizures today, we are far from finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's now my honor to introduce our great partner, former NYPD chief and now Chief of Security Officer for MTA, Mike Kemper.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. I'm Michael Kemper. I'm the Chief Security Officer for the MTA, and I'm happy to be joined today by so many of our law enforcement partners on this interagency task force. You know, as we near the end of 2024, we want to convey a simple message to anyone who still hasn't gotten the word on toll evasion. Don't do it. You will be identified, you will be stopped, and you will be subject to serious legal action, including fines, possible arrest, and having your vehicles impounded. Every agency represented here today has the tools, the training, and the technology to catch toll evaders. And if you're skeptical, just ask the 3,200 people whose cars have already been impounded, or the 700 people who have been arrested during one of our toll evasion operations just this year alone. Just ask them if we are taking this serious, and ask them if there are real, strong consequences. We will remain vigilant on toll evasion going into the new year. Make no mistake, our efforts and this interagency collaboration to combat this illegal behavior will continue. There will be zero tolerance for ghost cars and zero tolerance for criminals stealing millions from New Yorkers. The MTA's bridges and tunnels, from the Verrazano to the RFK to the Battery to the Midtown tunnels, are gateways to New York City, and we will not allow toll scammers and criminals to drive untraceable cars across them and through them and bring mayhem into our city. This illegal conduct is not only unfair to law-abiding motorists. While they are following the law and paying their tolls, others have made the decision to circumvent it. But as you are well aware of, and as is well documented, criminals are using quote-unquote untraceable ghost cars as a mode to and from crime scenes and acts of violence they participate in. This
All right, so what you were listening to there was officials over in New York City as they were talking about a variety of topics related to crime in the city. They did touch, of course, on the murder of the UnitedHealthcare CEO, a case that we are following very closely. Coming up here in just about 20 minutes, we'll be joined by our Fox 5 New York team as they have gathered new information on the investigation. They will be here in just about 20 short minutes. Do want to head to a quick break, but we'll have much more live news coming up in 2 short minutes. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 6:31 on the East Coast and 3:31 on the West Coast. Viewer discretion is advised for this next story as it is incredibly disturbing. A pair of twins and their older brother who face serious accusations of violent sexual assault arrested near Miami Beach, Florida. Alon, Tal, and Orrin Alexander, real estate giants known for their success in luxury markets in Miami and New York City, have been indicted on 3 counts of sex trafficking, fraud, and coercion. The indictment alleges that since 2010, the brothers worked together to operate a long-running sex trafficking scheme during which they allegedly raped and sexually assaulted women, often drugging them. The charges say the brothers would lure women to various locations where they were sexually assaulted, sometimes by several men. Again, a very disturbing story here, and I do want to bring in a guest to talk a little bit more about it. We have State Attorney Catherine Fernandez-Rundle in Miami-Dade, Florida. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here.
Thank you, Josh, so much for allowing us to come and talk to you about this because it is such an important message with the very disturbing facts that involve all women throughout this country. And what this case really stands for is that there's nobody that's immune to this situation, that, any kind of sexual assault or sex trafficking or any of those types of varieties of sexual assault, no one is immune from that. And it can happen to anybody, and it transcends all socio and economic statuses. So I think it's really good that you're covering this story so we can talk to listeners about how they, as victims, if they are, can come forward and have the strength to do that.
Yeah, and I did want to ask just kind of what goes through your mind? What were you thinking as you saw kind of the details of all of this unfold? I mentioned they are disturbing. I've used that word a few times here, but that's just an accurate depiction.
It is an accurate depiction, and it's actually in many ways a very gracious depiction because one of the very strong incidents that we talk about, and people will say it is the equivalent of a gang rape. And there was an instance where one girl was lured she was told there was going to be a barbecue, and when she got there, she was the only guest. And the 2 brothers and their cousin, fishermen, were there. And they literally, kind of trapped her and held her down with knees behind the back, holding down her arms. And the twin brothers argued in front of her as to who was going to go first, who was going to rape her first. If you can just put yourself in that mind frame for a moment. And she cried and she said no, and she did what she could, but she's completely immobilized by the 3rd man who's holding her down. So they took turns in raping her. And then when they were finished, Orrin actually told her, now you're going to have sex with our cousin, the man who's been holding you down. And she became so hysterical. She was unmanageable. She ran. She did everything she could. And so we have charged them with a very serious crime of multiple. It's called sexual assault by multiples. And so I'm sorry about that. And, you think about that scenario, where you're there and you're trapped and you can't move. And the whole isolation, the sense of fear, just incredible.
Why was it so important for you and others there to make sure that these brothers were charged in this case? I'm sure you put a lot of effort in the case, a lot of resources there. Why was it so important that they be charged?
Well, you know, Josh, I'll tell you why. Because there are victims that suffer in silence. I know that. I've been the state prosecutor here for many, many years. I have a human trafficking center. I have a sexual assault center that deals with children of sexual assault. And what you find happens is so many of them suffer in silence, and they're afraid, or they're confused, or they fear retaliation, or they fear societal, recusal of them. And so they don't want to come forward. And sometimes they'll tell a sister, a mother, an aunt, an uncle, a husband in one of these cases came forward, and he was the one that gave the strength to one of the victims to come forward. But you see, until others see that you can survive this, and it's not about you, the victim, it's about the abuser, it's about the rapist, no matter how wealthy or how poor he is, no matter how high in society he's regarded or he's not regarded at all. It doesn't matter. You as a victim have a right to hold them accountable. And that's why I think this case is so important, because, sometimes women are afraid because people like the abuser. They're popular, they're wealthy, they're high society, they're on the front of magazines. And then they say, oh my gosh, if I come forward, and I'm not saying that's just this case, this is in all kinds of celebrity type cases. And we saw that with the Me Too movement a couple of years ago, when women could see other women come forward. It takes a lot of courage to go tell your story to the world. And you know what? Other women saw that courage. They were inspired by it. They admired it, and then they did it. And so, I'm hopeful that out of this tragedy for these 3 victims that we have here, and I know New York has some other victims in your jurisdiction, that other women, if they're there, come forward. We can do this. You can do this.
You kind of already did this, but if there are those women who are out there, obviously, I would imagine you are looking for the possibility of more victims. So there are some women who are maybe afraid to come forward. What do you say to them? And again, you kind of touched on this already, but what message do you want to get across to them?
I think it's when you feel that you have been wronged, do not blame yourself. This isn't about you. You didn't do anything wrong. You've been a victim. Somebody abused you. I'll give you an example. One of the other cases we had, Josh, and this is a beautiful woman. As far as she knows, she went out on a date with somebody. And the next thing she knows is she's immobilized by what she believes was in a drink that she was given. She was given a drink, I believe it was wine, and they were chatting. And the next thing she knew, she couldn't speak. She couldn't move her body. She was paralyzed in so many ways. But you know what? She didn't do anything wrong. What he did was he wanted to have power over her. He wanted to have control over her. So he immobilized her to do that. There's so many women out there that probably have had this happen. And you know what? Don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed for any reason. That person that did that to you, that's the person that should be ashamed. We have hotlines, Josh. It's 305-547-3300. We have a whole safety net of services. We have advocates that are specialists, therapists. We have a support system. And the last thing I would say, because I know you've been kind enough to give me just a few minutes here, usually someone who's been raped tells somebody. And it's usually someone that's close to them, a sister, a relative, a mom. And if you know your loved one has been raped or sexually violated or trafficked or any of those variations of a horrible scheme, tell them they can come forward. Give them the courage. It's cathartic. They'll feel so much better when they get it out of their system and see, like tonight, those 2 men, those 2 brothers, they're sitting in our local jail all night tonight. And so people will be held accountable.
And it's a very important subject and situation, so you can have all the time you want. I did want to ask about the investigation. As far as the charges that have been filed at this point, are you able to say if there could be some other people out there, some other suspects who could be arrested and charged in this situation? Or do you believe that you have everyone that was involved?
You know, Josh, I never feel like we're finished, right, when we start. And as we move forward, actually, we pulled this case together fairly quickly on these 3 victims. And so I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that we're not stopping. And, you know, all this kind of exposure that you wonderful people in the media are giving this topic, it should be very encouraging, inspiring to others to come forward. So I don't know if there are the perpetrators, and I don't know if there are the victims. I hope there are none of each. But if they are, then we want to know about it. And hopefully when people see that something gets done about it, right? It's not just telling your story, nothing happens. Here, 3 women came forward, they told their story, and 3 men are going to jail. And so that's the beginning of seeking some sense of justice for these victims, but also to hopefully prevent others, either perpetrators that are predators that are listening to this, you know, understand you cannot force, immobilize, traffic, sexually assault, or threaten to sexually assault someone, because you will be charged and you're looking at serious charges. And to the victims out there, don't let those guys get away with it. Come forward. You're the victim. Please have the courage. Look at these 3 ladies. They did it. You can do it.
All right. Catherine Fernandez-Rundle, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and provide some additional perspective into the situation that's unfolding. Is there anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Well, I do want to just say, Josh, that, you know, this really was teamwork. And so one of the things about South Florida in particular, I think, and perhaps New York feels the same way, is they have a great law enforcement community. So this was a collaboration. The local FBI were fantastic. The Miami field office, they really helped coordinate with Miami Beach Police Department, my human trafficking commander, task force of our task force. And we all worked together to make sure that the search warrants that the New York office of the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York had obtained, that those were executed in a very safe and effective way, and that the arrests on our charges were also effectuated. And so they're in jail. They were transported to a local jail. So again, a big thank you to all the people that had something to do with bringing this case to fruition. And we want to wish our colleagues at the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York much good luck with their case. Anything we can do, they know we stand ready and able to assist.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and talk about a very tough subject. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks so much.